Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I am your host, Justin Dixon. And today we've got Cameron Magee on the podcast. He is the founder and owner of AVOD3 event production company. They are an audio and visual company that does large conferences, small local events there in Arkansas where they're based, but they also do conferences all over the country. It's a pretty cool episode because he started the business 14 years ago in his college dorm room, didn't really know what he wanted to do with the rest of his life, so he decided to start an AV business. It's been around for 14 years. They survived through COVID. We talk about what happened when his revenue went to zero overnight and how they weathered the storm. And now they're seeing conferences and in-person events really come back with a lot of force. So I think we get a lot out of this episode. So let's get Cameron on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. Cameron, man, nice to meet you. Good to have you on the podcast.
Glad to be here today, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's get everything started. Give everybody that's watching and listening a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Yeah, who I am. I'm a husband and father of two. I own and operate AVOD3 event production, and we're in Arkansas, which I was joking with you before the show. We're in the middle of nowhere. But as far as business is concerned, we're in the middle of everything. And so we do audio visual for big conferences all over the country. Last week we were in Orlando and Reno. The week before that we were in Pittsburgh and Dallas. We have crews all over every week of the year running sound in the back of these big ballrooms. So that's a little bit about me and our business, and it's great to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Do you have a specific area of conference or event that you focus on?
If you think of it as like horizontals and verticals, our horizontal, our service offerings consistent. We always do audio visual. We don't really do, registration or ticket sales. We don't do some of the other horizontals in the event world. We're not promoters. We're not selling concert tickets. It's just the production. It's just the crew, the AV crew and the gear. Vertical wise, we do dentists one day. We do lawyers the next. It's kind of funny for our folks. We did a conference last month of balloon people. 3,000. It was a balloon conference. It was so much latex everywhere. It was crazy. And so we do all sorts of conferences. We don't care what the topic is. We're just there to make it great,
Got it. And does the size of the audience or size of the venue matter, or do you scale up and down your AV crew and equipment? Would be something different for 300 versus 3,000, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah, about 1,000 persons pretty typical for us. So
okay.
If you kind of imagine, again, we do so many of these, it's easy for me to picture, but if you can imagine most conferences around 1,000 people or so, they're going to be a couple of days. There's going to be a big keynote main room, but there's going to be like 4 or 8 breakouts. Maybe there's a trade show component. When you position it like that, there's 25,000 of those. There are so many there's a conference for everything. Yeah. And so we absolutely scale down. Some clients, that's their big one, but then they do a regional 300 person. So they love us, want us to still do it. So we scale down. We bring less gear, less headcount. We do the 300. We've also done conferences with thousands and thousands of people with 6-figure, 7-figure budgets. Some of these productions can get really big, but just our North Star is a very typical, normal conference.
Yeah. So why did you start the business? How did you start it? When did you start it? Give us kind of the origin story.
Yeah, I'm the owner, the sole owner, and I'm the founder, which didn't seem that weird in my dorm room at the time when I was starting it. That's become quite odd, and just an outlier nowadays. Most of my friends that do this sort of work, they have a partner maybe that funded it, or maybe they're just the president. There's actually somebody else that's actually the owner. But I started it in my dorm room, which is kind of odd. And maybe perhaps why we're on the podcast today. It's a kind of a strange story, but I had just done AV at my church when I was a kid. I wandered up to the sound booth and just helped run the sound on Sundays and Wednesdays for youth and stuff like that. And I fell in love with it. I wasn't ever good at sports. I'm the opposite of athletic. If you can tell by looking at me, I don't work out. But I just found a real passion for this type of thing. And then I'm from Arkansas. There is nowhere here to do this type of thing. I need to move to New York or LA or a real market if I'm going to do it. But I've been here my whole life, and I'm pretty dead set to just be here and raise my two boys here, and my wife's from here. And so I kind of became entrepreneurial out of necessity. In my dorm room, my junior year, applying for jobs, realizing there aren't any in Arkansas. I don't want to go to these major cities. I'll just start my own little LLC. And at the time, I thought I would basically be like a wedding videographer, a DJ or something, very wedding weekend warrior type. But we're in Arkansas, and there's good stuff here. Walmart's here. We're super honored to get to serve Walmart. We got a shot with them about a decade ago, and we've stayed with them, and they've stayed with us. So we're honored to serve them. We serve the White House.
Wow.
If the president gets anywhere near Arkansas, there's multiple people at the White House and my cell phone number, and they give me a call, and we take care of him through multiple administrations, no matter who you voted for. I kind of have to say that nowadays, but we've been serving the office of the president for multiple administrations. So we're here, and it's a very small state, and we were a very small business when I started it, but we've really grown into a national business that just happens to be based in my hometown, and I'm super proud of that.
And I would imagine where you're physically located is potentially less important because how many actual events do you do in Arkansas? Like, you're probably going to Vegas, you're probably going to Denver, you're probably going to, name the big conference markets. Especially if you're a national brand, you're probably just on the road a lot.
We did 153 events last year, if you can believe that, Justin.
Okay.
And about half of them were in our hometown. There's events here, but you can imagine when we're at our hometown, it's doing, the live music at the farmer's market. And not all of it's that cute. I mean, there's real shows in Arkansas, but most of it is more hometown stuff. Half of the shows are on the road, and really the road is where our growth comes from. But it's important to me from a work-life balance standpoint. I don't want our people to basically be on tour. I don't want this to have to be a rock and roll business where they're always gone. And so we keep a very active book of business in our hometown, even though it's a tenth the size, as far as the revenue or the shows or the crew. It's just really good to just say, hey, you've been gone all week. Thanks for coming back from Orlando. Sorry you haven't seen your wife or husband in 5 or 6 nights. This week, let's just do a band, at the downtown square. And it's been really good. I'm grateful for the community that raised us. Obviously, it makes business sense. Everyone says to stop doing the local ones and just hit the road. But we keep a pretty even mix, honestly.
And then what's the typical, how do people find you, or are you kind of reaching out? What's the go-to-market strategy to go from hey, we're this hometown, we do weddings and church things and local farmers market stuff, to them being oh, hey, I'm doing Walmart, I'm doing the White House, and whenever the president is in the area, how do you go from one to the other? It seems like a pretty big jump.
It does seem like a big jump, and I don't know your audience if they're looking for a magic moment or something like that. That wasn't really the case. We're 14 and a half years old. I started at 21 in the dorm room. I'm 35, and I don't have a moment that was that's when we went public, or that's when I had an investor. It's kind of an unsexy way to say it. It's not really romantic, but it's just true. We don't have a lot of shots. Being from Arkansas, those first 5 years, there's not that much stuff going on. And so I knew every single project, I've got to give 110%. I've got to make it where this person wants to call me back 3 times. And if I do a really good job, they'll actually tell 3 friends. And so it's pretty, not romantic, and it wouldn't be a big investor startup story, but it's just kind of an old school business of just do a good job and make sure you don't ever forget the value of a customer. Now, that's all well and good. It's well, how are you then national? What really happened, Justin, was some of our local folks took us on the road with them.
Got it.
And it surprised me. We were doing local Walmart events, but there was a year where they said, hey, we've got some stuff in some bigger markets. Could you quote it? And we did, and they took us with them. And at the time, it was so funny. I was so arrogant. I was a little younger, and I was a little arrogant. I thought, man, we must be pretty hot stuff if they're flying us out and driving us to San Francisco. They must have not had anybody out there they trusted, or Washington, D.C., or the different cities we went to that year. And I just realized, no, we're just cheaper. It,
Oh.
it, it literally, it literally saved them money to
Yeah.
bring us with them, even with the flights in the truck. And so around that year, we actually got serious about sales and marketing. We changed our website instead of saying your hometown provider to national event production.
Mm,
We started reaching out to bid on RFPs. We started just taking that a little more seriously and realizing we can bid a Chicago event and win at a good price for us, not us undercutting. Like a good Arkansas price is a very, very competitive Chicago price.
yeah.
And so we have had clients take us with them. And then, as I said, tell three friends. And then the presidential thing is just we did a really good job on a small show that I think a bigger market probably would have sent their third string, but we sent our first string because,
Mm.
again, we can't afford to screw up a show. And that person got promoted and promoted and promoted. And then lo and behold, they're the director of production of the White House, and they've got needs and they're always 72 hours. And so they told their friends at the White House, hey, this guy really makes stuff happen for me. And so they give us a call and we take good care of them. But it's kind of a maybe eat your vegetables kind of thing. There's not like a take this pill and bulk up. It's just year after year of doing a really good job and being patient.
And I would imagine, and maybe correct me, but like obviously labor is a big component of your bid, I would imagine. And obviously for you not being in a specific market, then flights and things like that. But I would guess that if you're competing against a Chicago or New York based company, their labor costs are going to be a bit higher than yours if you're pulling people from Arkansas. And I guess the second question to that is like, are all of your employees, are they employees? Are they contractors? Are you pulling people like, hey, we need some subs in Orlando because our team's already gone to Vegas or something like that? Like, how big is the core group? And then how do you scale to do 153 events?
Yeah, I'd love to answer both those. Yeah. If there's somebody listening who's kind of geeking out on like, how is this business structured? I can just give you some numbers to play with like Play-Doh. Let's say the average AV is 100 grand at a conference, which some are smaller, but a lot are more than that. Believe it or not, these conferences, if there's going to be 1,000 people there, they want to make sure that keynote speaker is heard. They want to make sure if it's a corporate event, the CEO's message is really, really well, displayed.
Yeah.
And so let's say $100,000 event, half of that's gear and half of it's labor,
Hmm.
really. It takes a lot of speakers and microphones and cameras and live streaming and stage and lights and drape and truss. There's a decent amount of gear. And so of the $50,000 in this silly hypothetical model, probably 10,000 of that is the semi truck to get to Vegas and back. So 40,000 is gear, 10,000 is the truck. Same thing with the crew. It's probably 40,000 in actual labor of the crew, and then 10,000 in flights and per diem. And usually the client has a big hotel room block, so they just give us 5 or 6 of their hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And then to answer your second question, we typically send, if a typical crew is 8 people, 2 of those people are full time with me. They're
Okay.
teammates they're on the 401k, the health insurance, they're full timers, but really only about 2. And then we probably fly in 2 to 4 freelancers from anywhere in the country. Once it's a flight, it doesn't really matter where they come from. And these are freelance audio techs, video techs, lighting techs that we trust and we use all over. And then probably 2 to 4 of the crew are locals. We're in Orlando enough. We've made friends and met people down there that we can trust because we're in these markets 3 to 4 times a year. We've done it different ways over the years, Justin. At one point we had 2 to 3 times the team that we have now.
Mm.
We had a lot more people. We had that model for a while, and we just felt like it wasn't best for the client that we were having to say, hey, we got to fly 12 people. And so when we started feeling like it was actually best for the customer to have some people from local, and it was best for our team to say, okay, you two take this show, you two take this show, instead of us all going as like a big group every time, it really opened the door. Because the calendar is the hardest part of our business. Someone who
Yeah.
always has their show the week before Thanksgiving, and then someone else has their show the third week of November, and next year those are the same day. And so being able to we can be in 5 places at once today with our team, and that takes some doing. So that's really how we're set up to work. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And just one random question, because my sister's in event planning and she does big events all over the country and all that fun stuff. I'll put you in contact with her when we're done. But like, do you connect? Like, is that like a business development angle going after these big corporate companies that have their own internal event planning crew, and then they're going to hotels and doing site visits and doing the bid, and sometimes AV is included, sometimes they need to bring in an external person. So like, is that a business development strategy to go after corporate event folks?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for saying that. I can't wait to meet her and see what she's up to. I don't know what it's like to be a corporate meeting planner. I don't know what it's like to be a professional event planner. I know as an business owner, I get 30 outbound emails a day.
Mm.
I get so much outbound sales coming at me that I'm just numb to it. And every time that we've tried that type of just pure hitting the phones, calling up a corporation and saying, "Hey, can we be your next AV company?" It's never worked ever. We've done so many different marketing and sales things over the years. Really, what it's come from is me being at a site visit. I was just at a site visit a couple of days ago down in Dallas for that one. Being a good guy to work with,
Yeah.
on that site visit, there's a lot of different people involved. The city's there, the hotel's there, the person who does the contracting is there, and then being like, "Wow, this guy's a pretty great guy. He's a pretty reasonable guy. Seems like he's actually trying to do what's best by us on the internet and power and rigging and all the contractual stuff." And then them saying, "Well, hey, do you like working with him?" And then our client says, "Oh, we love working with him." And it's not all about Cameron. It would be if any of our production managers were there too, if Micah was there, Kayla was there. And then when they say, "Oh, that's great. Well, we just lost our AV vendor, or we've got a show in 6 months or in 18 months, we've got to go to bid." And it's just been patience like that, frankly. I wish we could outbound more. We've tried networking, we've tried all sorts of stuff, but really it's just people hearing about us and saying, "Let's give them a shot. Let's let them bid. Let's let them come on a site visit." And then sadly, the rest of the industry has almost forgotten that they're in the hospitality industry.
Mhm.
And so in a really weird way, and I don't know how to say this, but just us just being reasonable to work with, having a reasonable price, being responsive. I don't mean this arrogantly. I mean it wholesomely. Like I think we're in the top 90% just by doing like the fundamentals of just being good.
Yeah.
I think if we were in Chicago, we'd probably have more business than we know what to do with. There'd be so much opportunity that maybe we could be a little slower to get back on the contact forms or not be trying as hard. But we're in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And so if your sister says, "I'm an event planner," I am going to say, "Oh, great. Can I come see it?" I'm very interested in meeting people because we can't afford to kind of let those things go. But no, there's not a magic outbound cold marketing strategy. It's just do a good job and ask people to introduce you.
Yeah. I'm curious about the pandemic because obviously events shut down and everything went virtual. So obviously you had the business before and now you're still here after. So congrats on making it through that because I'm assuming that was not an easy 12, 18 months, however long it kind of impacted your world. But talk me through it. Like what happened in your space? Because I'm assuming you had a lot of business booked and then it just went away.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode about this. And in 2021, a lot of these things that I was on, that's pretty much what we talked about was just, what was that? To give you an example, Friday the 13th, which is coming up, we're recording this in March. It's coming up on the anniversary of COVID for me.
That's right.
We went to zero revenue overnight. Our busiest seasons are spring and fall. And so we were really ramping up to a very heavy April and May. In fact, it was going to be the strongest year ever. And everyone canceled in 48 hours.
Wow.
And so a couple of lessons from me from COVID. I know most small businesses, and I'm sure people listening are not small businesses, maybe they're larger, but most businesses only keep maybe 2 to 4 weeks of expenses around. They don't hold on to a lot of cash. And if I was in charge of the expenses, that would probably be true. But I was not allowed to be in charge of the cash flow. I trusted my finance person at the time. And actually, once I hired her, I said, "Don't let me look at the bank balances anymore." I hadn't looked at them in like 2 years at that point. Because as an entrepreneur and as a kind of a go-getter kind of person, if I knew we had money in the bank, I would have spent it.
Yeah.
I would have hired people. I would have bought more equipment. That's what I do with money. I hire people and I buy equipment. But luckily, she had about 3 months of expenses on hand, which, praise God, I think it's a miracle that we had 3 months on hand at the time because that's not normal. And then through her wisdom, which I always give her credit in the story, I'm the leader of the business, but this finance person, I think, really stepped up. Leadership has nothing to do with title. And that morning after the 16th of March, she walked in and told everybody, "We're all going to halftime." And that was a real difficult speech for a full-time team.
Yeah.
But by taking everybody to halftime, that turned 6 months of runway it turned 3 months of runway into 6 months of runway. And that's really the only way we survived that because virtual events, we could not convince anyone to try it. At the time, everybody was hesitant. And then we hunkered down. We ended up having to lay off almost the entire company.
Wow.
Right after we did, we made it to September. And right after we did, the phone started ringing again. It was quite frustrating that as soon as we had no team, then everybody decided they wanted to do virtual events. And so we really just kind of burned the candle at both ends and almost burned ourselves out, frankly, but we persevered. We started rehiring folks in 2021. And then we just hired a person every 3 weeks for 2 years, just kept rebuilding brick by brick. But yeah, the pandemic was awful, but it taught me a lot about being conservative with overhead and being smart about cash on hand and knowing the thing that helped me start this business, the courage and boldness, is probably the opposite when it comes to managing money. I should not be allowed to look at it. So that's how I run it now. My wife is in charge of all the money now so that I'm not looking at it. And that's really what keeps us okay, you know?
That's awesome. No, I mean, yeah, I started my recruiting business. I quit a full-time job in January of 2020. And obviously the pandemic ruined nobody was hiring, right? And so it was, you had a business and you would lay people off. Luckily, it was just me. So I just kind of had to grin and bear it as far as that goes. But yeah, that was kudos to you that you survived. I'm guessing that a lot of your competitors didn't. And so you probably came out of that stronger from I guess, phone calls coming to you because the people that they were going to use probably weren't available. So flash forward to now, I feel like, well, obviously we're recording this in March of 26. It feels like with AI and everybody's kind of a little bit nervous, cautious about trusting what they're hearing and seeing on Zooms and videos and social media and all that stuff. More and more people I'm talking to, especially because I do a lot of enterprise SaaS hiring in the sales space. And so conferences are a big revenue or lead gen tool. And it feels like more and more companies who were doing virtual selling, even selling, large $1 million, ARR deals, now they're going back to conferences. So are you starting to see things, people like, hey, I want to get back in person, even more so than, we saw coming right out of the pandemic? I feel like people are now kind of being like, nope, let's go to conferences. Let's go meet in person. Let's get back on the road and in the air and all that fun stuff. Like, what are you seeing?
I see that 100%. Yeah, I think that's a hypothesis in some way. And also it's kind of basically proven in other ways. Just like I said, with our sales and marketing, we find that when we can get face to face, it's just different. And even last week, even just a slight detour from the answer, I had a client that wanted to do a quick Zoom call. And I said, I really don't mind. I can just hop on a plane and come up to Minneapolis. I've got the airline miles. I mean, we travel so much.
Yeah.
It's really no problem for me to bounce up there. And I'm so glad that I did, because when I said I was coming, they got like 8 people in a conference room. They said, oh, he flew in to see us. And I got to meet so many more people on their team that are always just CC'd in emails that I don't get to do this with.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I went. And I really think what we all saw in COVID was we're humans and we're tribal and we need each other. And then there's been different versions of dips and surges of that coming out of that. But I for sure see that this year, Justin. The trade shows we're doing, the time on site. For a while, conferences were getting shorter. It was like, hey, we're just going to squeeze this into one day. And now they're actually getting a little bit longer. It's like, well, we want to have 3 different nights of evening social happy hours. So we're going to do 3 days.
Yeah.
So yeah, I absolutely think that's true.
Do you see industries that, because it sounds like you kind of have a wide range of industry, you're not specific to one or the other. Do you see industry specific increases in traffic or increases in extending the conference from 1 to 2 to 3 days? Or is it just kind of a, trend across all the types of conferences that you're doing?
I don't have a good answer for that. I think how I would answer that is the conferences that are internal corporate meetings. So if we do something for Walmart or JB Hunt or Tyson or other major corporations, we're honored to serve Ecolab. When we do those are getting more and more efficient. So what I mean is maybe there's not 1,000 people in the room, maybe it's 500 people in the room and 500 people are tuned in virtually. Those are getting more efficient on the corporate level. When it's, hey, all these people need to experience this, they need to hear this messaging, but maybe we don't need 1,000 in the hotel room block. Whereas the conferences that are essentially people going to market, so to speak, and every industry does that differently, whether it's a trade show, expo floor, or social things, whatever, those are getting bigger, where people are saying, well, I'm not just going to send our CMO, we're going to send 4 people with her or with him, and we're going to have a squad there, and let's kind of group work on this. That's the best answer I have, but I don't have perfect data from the last 5 years to really look at that. It's just more me being the nerd in the back of the room at the sound booth and kind of noticing what types of headcounts are shifting and which clients are really interested in our streaming and virtual things and which ones are like, no, we don't want to offer a virtual ticket. We need everyone to be there. So that's from the AV nerd, that's my perspective, but I'm not like a consultant who's tracking it, but that's my perspective.
No, that's interesting. I haven't seen a ton of hybrids anymore. I've seen more of them kind of get rid of the virtual thing because obviously you're selling that package for $99 versus an in person, which is 1,000 or something like that, right? And so yeah, it's interesting. A random question. I mean, you mentioned balloons. I would not have thought that balloons would have their own conference, but is there any other random weird conferences that you're like, I didn't know that this was something that you would have a conference for?
Gosh, I'm going to let the balloon one take the cake, and I'll add a story to sweeten the deal. But I don't get to go to many of these anymore. Our business has changed in a way where you have different people, you have different superstars over different years. But right now, we have the best team of production managers and technical directors. The team that actually goes in the field are so good. And so, really, where the business needs me to kind of be a chameleon and serve behind the scenes and fill in as a leader is actually in our shop. I'm at the shop today. It's 25,000 square foot warehouse on the other side of this wall. And I'm out here just making sure we get the right gear on the trucks because we're actually super thin on entry level workforce. 3 years ago, opposite problem. Entry level workforce, we had a whole squad of folks out there. The shop was great, but I was on site a lot because we were struggling to find freelancers. It's so funny how the market ebbs and flows like that. So I don't get to see as many today to know like what's some weird stuff that's happening. But I did hear a story from the balloon conference that I think it's okay to share. They had a fashion runway night where they were kind of doing like a fashion show, but all the clothing was only made out of balloons. And there was some sort of competition to see which balloon artist could use the least amount of balloons to cover these models. And I was like, I think I'm good. Like, I'm glad I missed that one. Like, that's great. Hope you guys had fun. That sounds pretty crazy, but it's pretty cool what these balloon artists can do. But yeah, it's that's probably a pretty weird one, was a fashion show where the clothing is balloons. But
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been weirder ones, but that's it for now.
No, that's fascinating. I want to go back to the labor thing that you just mentioned. So you're having a hard time finding early career entry level talent to help you in your shop.
Yeah.
That's fascinating because I mean, if you look at, all the things that I read and see, AI is getting rid of everybody's jobs. And one of the most impacted kind of demographics are the entry level roles because you can automate email copywriting, you can automate entry level graphic design, you can automate code and use AI for that, definitely at the entry level from what I've seen. So it's interesting that all of the entry level talent may not be interested in doing what you do. That's just an interesting thing. I would have thought you would be inundated with people being like, hey, I can't get a job, at Walmart or whatever, because they've automated some stuff and now I need to get something different.
I think you're just 6 months ahead of me. I'm actually encouraged to hear that that's your read on it, because maybe there's a wave and a surge coming where in 3 to 6 months we'll be fine. But yeah, our read, of the last maybe 6 months has been, it's just been difficult to get people to, once they try it, they love it. It's kind of funny. The event industry, it is road cases. I mean, you're pushing road cases. You're driving a forklift. You're unloading a semi. We're rolling miles of cables and drape. But there's a reason that people have done it for 50 or 60 years. It's a really cool community. And it's a great camaraderie and the teamwork feels great. But it's difficult in my experience, Justin, to get people to try that. When we post on Indeed that we're looking for a warehouse hand for an event production company, not many people self-select and say, oh, this is the one I'm going to click on. Yeah. I think if we posted cashier at a grocery store, then maybe we get 100 applicants or something like that. People can kind of associate, oh, I can know what that is. I'd like to do it. So we've got to figure out a way to let people actually see some video or photos or something and say, oh, that's kind of cool. I'd love to do that. Because once we get people, they do fall in love with it. But it's a difficult thing to go to a college or a high school or even a VOTEC type situation to say, hey, he wants to come do event production. People immediately assume, oh, I don't know how to run sound. I can't go anywhere near that. It's like, well, just come start. One of our best guys has been here 10 and a half years. And he was just a really humble guy and was like, I don't really know what I'll do with my life. I'll come work there for the season. And 10 years later, he's still here. He practically runs the place, but it takes a level of humility to say, I'd like to give that a shot. I'll start at the bottom. Let's see how it goes. And there's a real future in it. I mean, people here make great salaries, way above the average American salary. They're paid well because we work hard. Yeah. But they have to start at the bottom and learn the business. And I think there's maybe a lack of humility in a lot of people today to kind of say, oh, I'd love to start at the bottom. Whereas maybe 20 years ago, it was like, no, I'm going to need to start at the bottom.
Yeah. Let me learn the whole thing before I, run the business. Right. So, Interesting. And I guess where do you see, I guess, the next, call it 12 months from an events place? Obviously, I don't want to project too far in advance because who the heck knows what's going to happen in the world, 6 minutes from now, let alone, 6 months or 6 years. So like for the rest of 26, are you guys booked pretty solid? Because a lot of these bigger events, they plan months and months and months and months in advance. So like, what does 2026 look like for you?
Yeah, the indicator I would have, kind of like a red, yellow, green, how are things looking on my dashboard is most folks book production about 90 days out. They
Mm,
absolutely book the venue 18 months out. We
okay.
have some clients that have booked 2035. We have some clients that book venues 9 years in advance. Um, but most people book production about 3 months out. And
Interesting.
so the two
Okay.
indicators that I have this afternoon, before I was able to hop on this recording with you, we had two events signed in September. So
Mm,
that's a good indicator to me. That's 6 months from now, and they're going ahead and signing. That feels like a good indicator. And then also, I had a call with a new lead last week for an event in September that they said they're just not happy with who they've been using, and they're kind of curious to like listen to us. They wanted to see what we could do and things, and so I'm optimistic that folks are signing sooner, and people are curious to talk to us,
mm,
and those are really the best indicators I have. Now we don't win every bid. I mean, we win a lot of bids. Government, you have to be the lowest bidder. A lot of these formal institutions, nonprofits, associations, you have to be competitive, and we are,
yeah.
and we win some. There's always somebody that'll do it for cheaper, but those are my indicators of we've got a decent close rate. People are booking us sooner, and so I'm optimistic.
Yeah. And then we can't not talk about AI. Are you guys using it? Is it something that you've leveraged as a business owner? Had somebody on the podcast the other day that we recorded, and we were talking a lot about how he uses it more as a thought partner for him as an owner and a founder. And he can't really go to his team and bounce weird ideas or controversial ideas off of them. He needs kind of he uses AI as a thought partner to kind of do that. So are you using that as a thought partner? Or do you use it in other ways within the business?
I like that guy already. Let me know what episode that is because I'm going to go listen to that one. That's the number one way. Somebody
Yeah.
asked me the other day, like, how is Avad 3 using AI? And I would say Avad 3 is not really formally using it. Now, all the apps we use, our accounting software is powered by AI. Our
Yeah.
project management is making suggestions for us. The documents, the templates we use are always. So I think all of our typical off the shelf products that we're using, Google Suite, they're all getting faster and better.
Hmm.
But we don't have some proprietary, our whole server's doing this now, or we outsourced our entire bookkeeping department or something. That's not really happening. But I use it absolutely as a thought partner because I've learned about myself. I've got 20 ideas when I get out of bed in the morning. I can't leave the bathroom to head to work without 20 ideas. I stopped letting myself journal in the bathroom because I can't get out of the bathroom because I'm just journaling these ideas. None of them are good, but they're ideas.
Right.
And so I absolutely personally love AI. And I've probably spent maybe of the 7 or 8 hours my work day today, I probably spent 45 minutes of it more
Mm.
almost having a meeting with
Yeah.
AI on here's my thoughts, here's this, help me synthesize this and get it where it isn't going to scare a teammate when I tell them,
Yeah.
here's this idea, we need to change how we're doing this process. But if I go out here right now and that's just disruptive, and again, the thing that made me start the business can also be an impediment and can drive people crazy. And I just have to keep that awareness about myself. So I love using AI to journal it. And then I have to put it in the cooler for a couple of days and not let myself just get so excited that I'm like, here it is. AI
Yeah.
just cleaned it up, so it's ready to ship. I have to kind of tailor those ideas, but that's absolutely me. Now, if you're talking to other entrepreneurs, not everybody's that way, but that's how I'm using it.
I mean, most entrepreneurs are visionaries. They have more ideas than they know what to do with. And some of them are good, some of them are terrible, and some of them need refinement before they can be distributed to your team, to your world, to my wife hates when I have these ideas because I bring them to her and she's the type of person that's like, no, I need more data. I need more information than just here's this cool idea. Cause she's like, well, I know you're not going to do anything with it because you have these ideas and then I'm not an integrator. So I don't actually take the next step and like do research or find it. But AI has helped me kind of like suss out ideas that I can then, take my 100 ideas and boil it down to two or three that I should actually invest some time and money and effort into doing. So you and I sound like we're cut from the same cloth as having more ideas than we know what to do with. And unfortunately, most of them are terrible, but hey, some ideas are good.
I can relate to you and your wife's relationship for sure. And we don't run EOS. I love that language of integrator and visionary. We're not on it, but all my friends are, and I respect it. And yeah, I've had to learn over the years because my wife she's like a catcher. She's ready to be like, okay, I caught it. Now let's do it. And I have to tell her, like, I'm just kind of spitballing here, and I just need, you're my best friend. You're my partner. I need to talk this out, but we're not doing this tomorrow. I just need to talk it through.
Yeah. Your wife is more, I guess, friendly to your ideas. My wife's just like, I don't even want to hear it until you have it like sussed out or try it on somebody else, because, there's a longer story to this, but yeah, it's like you have the visionary and then you have the integrator. You need somebody in between that kind of is that buffer. And I think AI can be that, because you can give it all your terrible ideas and it can be like, well, actually this fraction of this idea is actually really good. Let's just drill into that versus, the whole thing.
That's my executive assistant. I'm a big advocate for executive assistants. I think, they were a lot more common early on, and even talking about AI, that's one that is on the chopping block. People are like, oh, I don't need an executive assistant. I'll use this calendar link. I'll use this and this, but I will always have an executive assistant. I have no intention of selling a VOD 3. I'm just going to run this until I can't walk. I plan to do this forever. But even if I didn't have a VOD 3, even if it was just me, I would still find a way to employ a full-time executive assistant. Here at VOD 3, we've promoted her title to be chief of staff because she does so much more across the business than just assisting me. But that is the person that, a thing that I love to read, I'll talk about it here in a minute, but I make it up, she makes it real, and then our integrator type person makes it repeat. Make it up, make it real, make it repeat. And that's been really powerful for me. And Paige is so quick to do exactly what you just said. Hey, part of this is gold. Most of this is complete junk. And we can just talk like that. And it's very helpful to just be honest with one another.
I love that you have the language. I can't remember the book that's in, but anyway, I know what you're talking about. The make it up, make it real, make it reoccur, make it repeat. Yeah, that was what I was trying to explain there a few minutes ago. But I guess, Cameron, if one question I try to ask a lot is around, you started this in your dorm room. So, you were probably just like, hey, let's just do this. I think it's cool. I'm just going to start it. And who the heck you probably didn't anticipate doing it 14 years later. Right. And so if you could go back to your dorm room, like is there anything you would change, anything you would do differently? I mean, obviously there's things you would probably invest in or do other things, but like from a business perspective, like, is there anything you would be like, man, I wish I would have done this. This would have been completely different or better or worse or whatever.
I have very few regrets. I think when I look back, and I don't have any regrets, but when I really think about next time notes, if I was like, hey, if we could do it over, what are my notes for next time? That's a term we use on our shows. We ask every crew at the end of the show to journal their next time notes and give them to the lead. And then they give them to me. I read every one of them because I'm curious.
I like that idea.
If we were to do this show again next year, what are your next time notes? If we did a show just like this next week, what do we not have to wait a year to implement? What do we need to change? Like, oh, you're sending way too much of this and not enough of that. And, I love next time notes. And when I look back on my career, back to the dorm room, I think that the best thing I've done is invest in myself. I love professional development and growth. I've read so many books. I have so many mentors and so many programs. So I would say do that again. I don't think I can do more of it because I almost do like the absolute maximum that like my sponge can hold, pouring water on it. But I think my things I would do differently, I am still sad about every person that we've had to either let go, fire, or has quit. I have so much, it's never personal. It's just business. They're just getting another job, or we help them get another job, or we ask them to get another job. There's different ways people leave the company. But every one of those, I just look back and say, could I have been more patient? Could I have communicated better? What is the lesson here for me to learn? Because when we hired this person, they're a great person. They're a good fit. And how did it go wrong? It's not the same as marriage. It's not a covenant. You're not supposed to stay together forever. People move on.
Yeah.
But every exit gets to me. Whether somebody resigns or gets fired or gets laid off, I have to go for a walk. I have a little path I walk out here and I just reflect on, man, like I really wish that this could be different right now. And I think that's my main thing going back to the dorm room is figure out, not HR, but just figure out how to try to make that work more. And who knows, maybe we've made it work more than I know, but I I just wish that the exits didn't have to be the way they are. I have so much just heart on the exits, but
Yeah.
that's probably the best way to answer that.
No, I like it. Before we kind of wind this thing down fully, I always try to ask a little around, like we already talked about kind of your thoughts on 2026, but like what's one or two things that you're trying to achieve in the next 12 months that if we jump on another recording a year from now that you'd be like, man, we hit all of our goals and these were the kind of the top two that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, when I think about our goals, our goals the previous years have been what we call peaks and valleys. The calendar is king. And so if you would have asked me 3 years ago what are our goals, it would be, we've got these valleys that are either too deep in revenue or too wide in revenue, and we've got to fill in the valleys with dates of shows. Now, it's not so much peaks and valleys as it is, a mentor of mine calls it, he says, Cameron, you're in the business of auctioning off dates to the highest bidder. And I love that. I love thinking about it. He uses a ski lodge analogy with me all the time. He's like, look, the ski lodge has the same amount of hotel rooms in July as they do in January, and they sell for different prices on those dates, and you need to act like it. And that's difficult for me because to me, a microphone should be $150 every day of the year. But what I am learning is when to sell that microphone to who. And, those September shows at Sign Today, those are perfect bullseyes. We're happy to do them. But in the past, we've been too quick to slot a show we did last September in that date and not be open and ready for a new lead or a new referral or a new who knows to come in and actually auction that date to a higher bidder.
Right.
So for so many years, 14 years, and I'm in Arkansas, I try to be visionary. I try to imagine we could be doing a 7-figure conference on this date, but that's difficult to kind of, I don't want to live in a fantasy. I'm like, no, this is a nice show, but there's been so many times where we have declined so much because we have to decline a lot of shows. That's the hardest part about this business is we'll have a valley that we're begging for a show, and then we'll have a peak that we need, and we have to decline a show. But really, when I look at those declines, it's just because we said yes to too small, too soon. And there's probably a life lesson in there of just kind of like settling or, scarcity mindset or something.
Yeah, it's a bird in hand kind of thing. It's like, well, I got this one. Why, who knows? Maybe I'd rather have some money than no money, right? So,
and it's not a desperation thing. It's just like we did that show last year. It was a good show. Be happy to do it, And then when we decline a show that's triple that, I'm like, wow, But you can't regret that too much because you never know the dates that's going to come in. But I think to answer your question about goals for this year, it's not filling valleys. It's being more responsible with who we give our yes to and when we give it to them. And that's the hard part. We don't want to not do any show we did last year, but our team is fairly set. Like we're not planning to 10x our headcount. This is basically the squad we want and the people we want and the size business we want, the square footage, the gear, the debt, the investment. This is the model. And we just want to run this for 25 years.
Yeah.
And so really it's more about almost just replacing a good with a great. One at a time on the calendar. That's going to be hard, but read a great book called The Go-Giver, and it was a great example of realizing there's somebody who wants that, good event that when I was coming out of college, that good event would have been a Christmas present. And so I've made relationships with folks that are a little smaller than us, a little younger than us, not trying to do what we're trying to do. And when I can refer them, hey, we can't do this show anymore. Client, meet this person. They're going to take just as good a care of you. I sleep like a baby. The show's good. They're happy. But I think it's the discipline and the timing to have that foresight, the best that I can. That's really what this year and the next 3 years of goals are all about.
Love it. Love it. Well, Cameron, man, this has been an awesome conversation. I could probably talk a lot longer. I actually didn't know I was going to enjoy talking about conferences and event stuff as much as I have. So I appreciate that. But as we wind things down here, we'll end the show just like I do every episode with a 3-pack of questions. First question here is what's a book or podcast that you have found helpful that you want to recommend?
Number one book, I'm a big fan of Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan's the author. He's friends with Ben Hardy. Dan Sullivan's the founder of a program called Strategic Coach that's changed my life. It's a workshop I go to once a quarter in Chicago. I've been going for 4 years. And my favorite book by Dan Sullivan is called Who, Not How. I love this book so much. And he's probably written 50 books. I could refer any Dan Sullivan book. So if you've already read Who, Not How, just pull up Dan Sullivan and pick another one. But that's my number one.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about Strategic Coach offline. But anyway, what's your favorite thing you do outside of work?
Outside of work, the Two things I do, if I'm allowed to say two things. I love to fly small airplanes. I'm a private pilot. I'm instrument rated. I love to go rent a Cessna and fly it. I love flying small airplanes. And then I play drums in a 90s country cover band, if you can imagine that. We play a lot of Brooks and Dunn and Garth Brooks. I play drums at church, but I've been playing drums at church for 20 years. The 90s country is just in the last 10 years. I have a lot of fun with it. That's how I kind of have hobbies now. Of course, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I'm in the driveway with my boys after work playing wiffle ball. But when it's a Cameron fun couple hours, that's what you can find me doing.
Love it. Very cool. Last question here. Favorite vacation spot?
Favorite vacation my wife and I ever took was Hawaii. We had to save for 2 years for that one. We had been doing pretty normal vacations, but we did Oahu. And we just landed, rented a car, bought a loaf of bread, and made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches all week and just circumnavigated the island. And I have never had so much fun just adventuring and feeling so free, still on U.S. soil, but just feeling just the paradise of that island and the heritage of it is beautiful. So favorite vacation, Oahu, for sure.
Love it. Awesome. Cameron, it's been a lot of fun getting to know you and learn about your business. If people want to reach out, maybe they have conferences they need audio and video for, if they just want to learn about who you are and what you're doing, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, I'd love for them to just follow me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah, Cameron Magee. My last name's spelled Magee. But hit follow, hit connect. I'd love to stay in contact that way. A lot of the friends I've made from doing these things are not even people who care about AV. They just care about small business or want to stay in touch. Or I love to post about leadership, team building, those sorts of things. So yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. If you find me on Facebook, it's just pictures of my kids and my dogs. So LinkedIn's probably the best thing.
Awesome. Cameron, man, again, really appreciate the time. Thank you for being on the Growth Capital podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Best of luck with the show.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.